In the winter of 1942, a quiet tension hung over Zurich, one of the few European cities where the war felt close enough to sense but distant enough to ignore. Swiss neutrality wrapped the streets like a protective cloak, yet beneath it pulsed a world of covert finance, clandestine meetings, and whispered allegiances. Intelligence officers later noted that more encrypted messages passed through Zurich's banking district that year than any other location outside London or Berlin. It was in this charged atmosphere that Allied cryptographers first stumbled upon the codename, the Runner, a mysterious courier moving classified financial intelligence with a precision that baffled both the OSS and MI6. The challenge for the British began with what seemed like a routine intercept. In February 1942, Station X at Bletchley Park decrypted fragments of an WWII transmission referencing Cipher movements originating in the Zurich corridor. At first, the reference drew little concern. Zurich was known as a crossroads for spies, defectors, and opportunists. But a second message, decoded weeks later, marked a shift. It identified the courier's movements as being linked not to German assets but to British operatives believed to be working with American intelligence. The implication was alarming. Someone inside Switzerland was passing sensitive Allied-linked data into channels monitored by the Reich. British intelligence quickly assigned the matter to its regional handlers in Bern. MI6 case officer Henry Emerson described the discovery in a 1947 memorandum. The courier's discipline was remarkable. He left no trace of his handling, yet every trail eventually pointed to Zurich. Whoever he was, he understood the geography of secrecy. Emerson's team cross-referenced the intercepted cipher signatures with known operatives but found no match. The codes were precise, elegant, almost academic, more akin to pre-war banking formats than military encryption. That detail later became critical. The Allied struggle to identify him was complicated by Zurich's environment. The city, neutral yet heavily surveilled, hosted hundreds of foreign agents under the guise of diplomats, economists, or Red Cross officials. Banks became battlegrounds of secrecy. Cafés served as impromptu safe houses. Switzerland's famed federal police monitored foreign contacts, but their neutrality prevented them from direct interference unless Swiss interests were threatened. This allowed figures like the Runner to thrive in the shadows. Allied reports noted that the courier favored the Bahnhofstrasse district, an artery lined with banks known for discreet wealth management. Witnesses recalled a man blending effortlessly into the professional crowd, carrying nothing but a slim case and a newspaper folded twice, a common method for marking covert meeting points. The British grew increasingly convinced that he was using neutral banking channels to mask the exchange of Axis industrial data, a commodity both sides desperately sought. Intelligence analysts from the OSS Research and Analysis Branch believed the Runner was funneling financial clues that could expose hidden Reich accounts bolstering German industrial output. Historical context only deepens the mystery. By 1942, Germany relied on complex webs of foreign-held reserves to supplement its war machine. British blockade strategies made direct transfers nearly impossible, forcing the Reich to rely on covert intermediaries. Neutral countries like Switzerland became conduits for these economic shadows. Allied command later stated that without these hidden financial arteries, the Axis war economy would have collapsed far sooner. For a lone courier to possess insight into such networks meant he was either highly placed or extremely dangerous. A diary entry from an MI6 field officer in Bern gives a hint of how seriously the matter was taken. Zurich has become a hall of mirrors. Every movement is reflected, reversed, and concealed again. The Runner is either our greatest ally or an unseen blade waiting to fall. This perspective shaped the Allied approach. The British needed the Runner's information, but they also needed to know whom he served. The first real clue surfaced when OSS field support intercepted a coded note left in the cloakroom of a Zurich tea room. The cipher resembled early 1930s Swiss banking encryptions, modified with subtle British phrasing. It suggested coordination with Allied elements yet was purposefully vague. Allied analysts believed it referenced industrial shipments from firms linked to the German war economy. Shipments that, if traced, might reveal board members sympathetic to the Allies or covertly supplying intelligence. But the most unsettling reveal came from a partial WWII decrypt. It named the courier not as an enemy, but as a threat, a man brokered between shadows, whose movements disrupted German plans. The phrasing suggested fear, even respect, from an agency not prone to exaggeration. For the first time, both sides recognized his strategic importance. As winter turned to spring, the British faced a growing issue. Every attempt to identify or contact the courier resulted in misdirection. Each lead evaporated into Zurich's labyrinth of narrow lanes and financial halls. Whatever his purpose, the runner stayed a step ahead of all who pursued him. And yet, every coded fragment, every abandoned message, hinted at a larger intention, one tied to the financial veins feeding the Axis war effort. As Allied command sifted through fragmentary clues, one question lingered. Was the runner working toward the same goals they were, or leading them into an unseen trap? By the spring of 1942, Zurich had become a chessboard of invisible players. While Allied and Axis diplomats publicly maintained an air of cautious civility, their intelligence services waged a silent contest beneath the veneer of neutrality. Into this world stepped Lieutenant Warren Hale of the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, an analytical prodigy from Boston, known within Special Branch X in London for deciphering intricate ciphers faster than most machines could process them. Hale was dispatched under a simple directive: find the runner. Establish intent. Secure cooperation or contain the threat. Hale arrived in Zurich in May, operating under the guise of an attaché for the American legation. His team included two MI6 handlers familiar with the local intelligence landscape: Margaret Ellison, a field operative skilled in counter-surveillance, and Captain Victor Lambert, a veteran of British Section D with experience navigating the Swiss underground. Their initial surveys focused on patterns within Zurich's Bahnhofstrasse, where the runner's movements had reportedly been observed, and on the cafés and trams that sheltered the city's unspoken exchanges. The struggle began immediately. The runner appeared to anticipate Allied observation with uncanny precision. Each known sighting was followed by a tactical shift. A new route, a different bank, a variation in the coded markings he reportedly left at safe houses. Hale grew increasingly convinced they were not chasing a saboteur but someone trained in the subtleties of spycraft, perhaps an ex-banker with wartime alliances that spanned both sides. Historical context made the operation even more fraught. Switzerland, though neutral, was a magnet for wartime refugees, underground financiers, and covert intermediaries. OSS reports from the period describe Zurich as a marketplace of loyalties, where information flowed like currency and true allegiance was often obscured by necessity. The Swiss Federal Police, anxious to preserve neutrality, monitored foreign agents closely, forcing both the Allies and Axis to operate with extraordinary caution. Hale's team thus worked under constant threat of expulsion, or worse, unintentional exposure that might compromise broader Allied operations. A diary entry attributed to Hale illuminates the tension of those early days. Every street corner feels like an open ledger. Every face seems to audit us as we pass. Zurich is a city of quiet eyes. Their breakthrough came from an unlikely source: a coded symbol stamped on the underside of a bank communique left at a Bahnhofstrasse teller window. The symbol, a stylized cross formed from 4 chevrons, matched markings recorded in a pre-war ledger belonging to a Zurich banking guild that traditionally handled international transfers. Hale recognized the signature as similar to one of the fragments recovered during the earlier WWII intercepts. It was the first concrete connection between the runner and a physical location. Lambert traced the symbol to a small private bank on Pelikanstrasse, known for its discretion. Surveillance revealed nothing unusual. Businessmen arrived and departed, clerks adhered to predictable routines, and the building's security was standard. Yet every afternoon at precisely 16:10, a man entered through a side door, stayed no more than 3 minutes, then exited into a tram heading for the river. None of the clerks recognized him. He never approached the main tellers. Hale took careful notes, sensing the pattern behind the apparent simplicity. The insight that followed shifted the entire investigation. Ellison discovered that the tram the man consistently boarded, Line 2, passed directly by several safe houses used historically by anti-Nazi German dissidents. Reports indicated remnants of the Schwarzkapelle resistance network were operating between Zurich and St. Gallen. It seemed possible that the runner was a courier for these dissidents, transporting financial intelligence in coded form. But the clarity was short-lived. During a planned interception near Lake Zurich, Hale's team was outmaneuvered. Swiss police unexpectedly redirected tram traffic following a bomb scare at a nearby station, a disruption neither side had anticipated. In the confusion, the runner vanished. Only a folded note remained at the tram stop, marked with another banking symbol and the number 43. Hale recognized it as a reference to a pre-war Swiss commercial codebook used to identify shipment categories. The clue seemed to confirm suspicions. The runner was carrying intelligence tied to Axis industrial logistics. The deeper reveal came days later. An OSS contact embedded at a Zurich trading firm uncovered evidence that German industrial agents were hunting for the same courier, intercepting his routes with growing aggression. One informant claimed the WWII had assigned an officer from its 3F branch, specialists in counterintelligence, to locate the runner before the Allies. This heightened the stakes. The courier was no longer just a figure of interest but a vulnerable conduit caught between two converging forces. Hale's reflections from that week capture the shift. He's not merely avoiding us. He's avoiding everyone. Someone like that doesn't run for himself. He runs for a cause. The episode left Hale with a modern lesson echoing through time. Intelligence work depends as much on understanding people as decoding patterns. And in Zurich, the runner's psyche, disciplined, elusive, purposeful, was a cipher of its own. As June drew near, Hale prepared a coordinated attempt to intercept the courier at a suspected rendezvous in St. Gallen. But the operation would soon collide with events neither side foresaw, events that transformed a simple contact mission into a race for survival as German agents closed in from the shadows. By midsummer of 1942, Allied command believed the runner's intelligence could expose a financial artery sustaining the German war machine. The trail of coded bank signatures he left behind suggested intimate knowledge of industrial supply routes. Routes that, if mapped, might have revealed how Germany covertly funded operations across North Africa. With the Afrika Korps under General Erwin Rommel pushing deep into Egypt, the importance of disrupting these channels had escalated into a strategic priority. And so Lieutenant Warren Hale and his team from Special Branch X found themselves preparing for their most delicate maneuver yet. An arranged contact in the quiet Swiss border town of St. Gallen. St. Gallen was a calculated choice. Nestled near the German frontier, it functioned as a discreet junction for dissidents, traders, and couriers who required proximity to both Switzerland's neutrality and Germany's porous commercial borders. According to MI6 records, the runner had used St. Gallen several times as a transfer point for coded ledgers. Hale's mission was to establish a live meeting, one arranged through an OSS informant known simply as Elias, a former textile merchant who had been aiding Allied intelligence with information on German commercial agents. The plan was elegant in theory. Elias would leave a coded message, a handwritten quotation from a Swiss poet, on a park bench near the Abbey district. The runner would retrieve it and then follow a planned route to a secluded bookshop where Hale and Ellison would be waiting. Lambert would run counter-surveillance, tracking any suspicious individuals who might shadow the courier. The operation, though quiet, bore the weight of months of pursuit and the growing urgency of a war that was shifting unpredictably. But even the most meticulous plans falter under the strain of wartime shadows. The struggle began the moment Elias failed to make a scheduled contact. He had agreed to meet Hale the evening before the operation to review final details. Instead, his hotel room was found empty, with no sign of a struggle, only an overturned glass and a hastily packed suitcase, as though he had been interrupted mid-preparation. Swiss police were notified, but their inquiries were limited. Neutrality demanded they avoid entanglement in the secret conflicts of foreign intelligence services. Hale recognized the implications immediately. Elias's disappearance meant only two possibilities. The WWII had intercepted the plan, or Elias had defected under coercion. Either scenario was catastrophic. But with the timeline already in motion, Hale and his team pressed forward. They placed themselves in position at dawn, scanning every face that passed the park bench where the coded message had been left hours earlier. The insight that followed remains one of the most chilling moments recorded in Hale's mission notes. At 8:17, a man approached the bench, not the runner, but a German operative known to MI6 as Franz Kruger, an Abwehr officer suspected of infiltrating Swiss commercial networks. Kruger retrieved the note, glanced only briefly at its contents, and then folded it into his coat before walking away calmly, disappearing into the narrow lanes of St. Gallen's Old Town. The courier operation had been compromised. Lambert tailed Kruger at a distance, careful to blend with the sparse morning crowds. Kruger made no attempt to conceal his movements, suggesting either arrogance or confidence that he was protected within Swiss borders. But then, in a sudden moment of improvisation, Kruger ducked into a side alley and vanished behind a delivery cart. By the time Lambert reached the spot, the Abwehr officer was gone. The coded message, too, had disappeared. Hale and Ellison regrouped in the bookshop, the gravity of the failure settling over them. In the silence, Ellison observed, "He knew the message was for someone else. He wasn't checking for us. He was checking for him, the runner." The implication was clear. The Abwehr suspected the courier's involvement in something larger than a simple transfer of financial intelligence. And they were hunting him with a precision equal to that of the Allies. The deeper reveal emerged from an intercepted German transmission 2 days later, decrypted partially by Bletchley Park. It referenced the disappearance of an economic intermediary, believed to be communicating with Allied agents. The message suggested that German officers had identified a courier operating within Swiss commercial networks who possessed dangerous insight into Reich financial reserves. The language was cautious but carried an unmistakable urgency. Hale now understood that the runner was not just a courier. He was a liability to the Abwehr's covert financial structure. Modern historians point to this moment as pivotal. The Allied effort to expose Axis funding mechanisms, later formalized in operations like Safehaven, depended on locating individuals who understood the labyrinth of accounts used by Germany to conceal wartime transactions. If the runner held such knowledge, he represented a rare intelligence opportunity, one the Abwehr was determined to eliminate. Hale reflected on the moment years later. St. Gallen taught us that the runner was living in the narrow gap between two predators. We were not rescuing him. We were chasing a man already running for his life. As summer advanced, Hale faced a decision that would define the mission. Double down on identifying the courier or withdraw before Swiss authorities intervened. But the burned ledger fragments discovered days later outside Zurich, a discovery that bore unmistakable traces of the runner's cipher, compelled Hale forward. There was no turning back. The chase was entering a more dangerous phase, where each misstep risked not just failure, but the loss of the one man who seemed to understand the secrets Germany had buried in its shadowed financial empire. By late 1943, the pursuit of the runner had taken on an almost mythic quality within Allied intelligence circles. Lieutenant Warren Hale and his team had traced fragments of the courier's movements across Switzerland, but each lead seemed to dissolve as soon as it surfaced. Reports from OSS operatives and MI6 indicated that the runner had established a series of rendezvous along the Swiss-German frontier, specifically near Kreuzlingen, a small town on Lake Constance that provided direct access to both nations while remaining under the watchful eyes of Swiss neutrality enforcement. Here, the intelligence corridors were narrow, dangerous, and heavily contested, making every move a calculated gamble. The struggle intensified as Allied surveillance revealed a convergence of forces. Abwehr operatives, MI6 agents, and independent intermediaries were all observed in close proximity, each vying to either intercept or protect the runner. Surveillance photographs from Swiss authorities, later declassified, show shadowy figures exiting trams and entering secluded warehouses along the lake, suggesting a complex network of safe houses and clandestine drop points. Hale's team was aware that a misstep could compromise months of intelligence work, potentially alerting the Germans to the broader Allied operation aimed at disrupting Axis industrial financing. Historical context clarifies why the frontier had become such a critical locus. By mid-1943, Germany's war economy relied heavily on covert reserves and transnational transfers to sustain military operations across multiple theaters, particularly as Allied bombings increasingly disrupted domestic production. The runner's role, whether by design or circumstance, was central. He acted as a broker, carrying critical information that could expose hidden accounts and the networks used to move funds from neutral banks into Axis hands. This intelligence had the potential to aid operations like the impending invasion of Normandy, where financial disruption could weaken German resistance. Hale documented a breakthrough on September 14, 1943. A partially decoded ledger, left behind in an abandoned wine cellar near Kreuzlingen, revealed patterns of transfers between Swiss industrial firms and German manufacturers supplying the Afrika Korps. It was a tantalizing glimpse into the runner's work. Each line in the ledger, though incomplete, suggested precise knowledge of account numbers, coded intermediaries, and timing windows for transfers. This discovery confirmed that the courier had operated not randomly, but with meticulous intent. The reveal, however, came with a growing sense of frustration. Despite multiple stakeouts, the runner remained elusive. Every attempt to intercept him ended in near misses. A shadow glimpsed in an alley, a door closing just as the team approached, a safe house suddenly vacated. Surveillance logs from MI6 describe the runner's movements as fluid, almost preternatural, slipping through the mesh of our observation as if he knew every trap before it was set. The ambiguity left Allied command in a constant state of tension. They knew the runner's information was valuable, but they had no control over how or where it would appear next. Ellison, recording field notes during a rain-soaked October evening, reflected on the stakes. Every building we enter, every tram we watch, is a shadow of his presence. He is always one step ahead, not just of us, but of anyone who would claim him for their cause. The application of this intelligence was not purely tactical. It held a broader strategic lesson. Allied planners recognized that financial intelligence could be as decisive as battlefield operations. A single ledger could reveal supply lines, fund allocations, and secret transactions that sustained enemy divisions. Hale's notes emphasized that understanding the human networks behind these flows was as critical as decrypting the messages themselves. The final twist of this phase occurred on October 22, 1943. Hale's surveillance team tracked the runner to a lakeside boathouse near Kreuzlingen, where a meeting between him and unidentified intermediaries appeared imminent. Just as the operatives prepared to intervene, the courier vanished, leaving behind only a scorched ledger and a fragment of ciphered paper. The burned document, partially legible, contained references to German industrial accounts and a series of numbers that, at first glance, seemed arbitrary. Later analysis suggested they were shipping codes tied to Axis military equipment. The close of this chapter left Hale and his team with a mix of triumph and uncertainty. They had confirmed the runner's involvement in transnational intelligence and partially uncovered the depth of his knowledge. Yet he had escaped physical capture once again. The discovery of the burned ledger confirmed that he was not careless. Every trace left was intentional, a breadcrumb designed to convey essential intelligence while maintaining his anonymity. As winter approached, Allied command understood that the pursuit of the runner was entering a decisive stage. His actions had already impacted the planning of operations across multiple theaters, yet the ultimate goal, secure extraction or verification of his allegiance, remained unresolved. The lakefront in Kreuzlingen, silent and fog-bound, had become a testament to both his skill and the precariousness of intelligence work in neutral Switzerland. The question lingered: would Hale finally be able to contact the runner before German forces closed the net entirely, or would this elusive figure disappear into history forever, leaving only fragments of ciphers and burned ledgers as evidence of his extraordinary wartime role? By early 1944, Allied command recognized that the runner's intelligence could directly influence operations on multiple fronts. Normandy loomed on the horizon, and understanding the financial underpinnings of the German war machine had become just as critical as decoding troop movements. Lieutenant Warren Hale, now seasoned from months of tracking the elusive courier, faced the challenge of piecing together fragments of a network that spanned Swiss banks, clandestine couriers, and German industrial intermediaries. Each lead brought both promise and peril, for every step forward risked alerting Abwehr agents who had intensified their surveillance along key transit points. Hale's most promising intelligence came from Bern, through a British liaison named Sir Malcolm Fletcher, who had long observed suspicious financial flows between neutral Swiss accounts and German holdings. Fletcher reported a man matching the runner's description crossing into the French resistance corridor near Annecy, a narrow mountainous passage used to smuggle people, messages, and resources between Switzerland and occupied France. If the runner had indeed entered the resistance network, it could signify a broader collaboration, potentially linking him to Allied plans for disrupting Axis supply lines in the south of France. The struggle to verify this movement, however, was immediate. The resistance cell in Annecy had suffered a raid by German forces in late February 1944, leaving most documents and informants either captured or destroyed. Only a few surviving members recalled a banker with British ties, passing through weeks before. The information was fragmentary, yet consistent enough to suggest that the runner was continuing his work, relaying financial intelligence, arranging transfers, and possibly coordinating with resistance networks to secure critical supply points for the Allies. Historical context highlights the significance of this period. With Operation Overlord approaching, Allied planners needed to ensure that German forces could be economically constrained, preventing reinforcements from reaching the Normandy coast in time. The runner's knowledge of hidden accounts and covert transfers could provide the Allies with leverage to freeze or redirect resources vital to the Axis war effort. It was intelligence of a rare caliber, bridging finance, espionage, and field operations in a way that few agents could comprehend. Hale and Ellison's field reports indicate the methods used to verify the runner's presence were painstaking. They relied on cross-referencing eyewitness accounts, tracking financial anomalies in Swiss ledgers, and monitoring known abwehr contacts for signs of sudden activity. Each clue pointed to the courier's extraordinary discipline. He traveled lightly, maintained minimal records, and left cryptic messages only in the hands of trusted intermediaries. His skill in navigating both the physical terrain and the clandestine networks kept him consistently one step ahead of both Allied and Axis forces. The reveal, however, remained tantalizingly incomplete. A partially recovered resistance notebook contained an entry. The banker moves unseen, yet the Germans pursue shadows. His purpose remains unclear, but his path benefits the Allies. The ambiguity persisted. Was he operating independently, or was he a formal asset of MI6 and the OSS? The lack of clarity frustrated even seasoned operatives, leaving the runner's ultimate allegiance a matter of conjecture. Hale's reflections during this period capture the tension. Every lead brings us closer to him, yet further from certainty. He is the key to a puzzle whose edges we can glimpse but never hold. The stakes rose further when the Allied planners realized that German forces were taking extraordinary measures to safeguard critical financial records. Cross-border transfers were being rerouted, banking correspondences were increasingly encrypted, and courier routes were under constant surveillance. The runner's continued mobility suggested he had an understanding of these patterns far beyond that of an ordinary agent. He had effectively become a moving cipher, a human key to the Axis financial network. The application of his intelligence was immediate. Analysts used the fragments of data he indirectly provided to identify German industrial suppliers in occupied territories, allowing Allied forces to target shipments of materials such as tungsten, rubber, and specialized machinery, resources crucial to sustaining Axis operations. Even partial knowledge of account numbers and transfer schedules enabled Allied planners to freeze funds or disrupt financial flows covertly, a strategic impact disproportionate to the physical scale of the intelligence. By spring of 1944, Hale concluded that the runner had not only survived the war's most dangerous corridors but had done so while maintaining operational integrity. Yet the question lingered: where would he appear next, and could the Allies finally establish a secure link to verify his allegiance before crucial operations like the Normandy landings commenced? Every lead suggested a convergence between espionage, finance, and frontline strategy, yet the man himself remained a shadow, moving through neutral territories, leaving hints but never a trace tangible enough to grasp fully. The closing tension of this chapter left Allied command with a singular, unresolved dilemma. The runner's intelligence could shape the course of major campaigns, but without establishing contact, the Allies risked losing not only the data he carried but also any understanding of his ultimate objectives. The fog of war, already dense, thickened further as the elusive courier continued to broker shadows in the uncertain corridors of Europe. With the liberation of Paris in August 1944 and the retreat of German forces across Western Europe, the focus of Allied intelligence shifted from active operations to post-war reconstruction. And with it, the search for the runner reached a crucial impasse. Declassified OSS and MI6 reports from this period provide conflicting accounts. Some suggested he was a Swiss banker acting independently to disrupt Axis finances. Others maintained he was an MI6 asset who vanished once his mission was complete. The ambiguity surrounding his true role became one of the most enduring mysteries of the war, leaving historians to piece together fragments of evidence scattered across Switzerland, France, and Germany. Lieutenant Warren Hale, reflecting on the operation years later, emphasized the runner's strategic significance. He was neither fully ours nor fully theirs. He operated in a space where allegiance was defined by intelligence, not nationality. His knowledge of Axis industrial and financial networks was unparalleled, and every step he took shaped the outcome of operations we may never fully quantify. Despite months of surveillance and careful planning, Hale's team never made direct contact with the courier after the French Resistance Corridor episode. Instead, the runner became a ghost in the archival record, leaving only the burned ledgers, coded fragments, and cryptic eyewitness reports as testaments to his work. Historical analysis suggests the runner's intelligence likely contributed to operations like Safehaven and broader Allied financial interventions designed to track, freeze, or redirect Axis funds. By late 1944, the Allies had begun exploiting loopholes in Switzerland's banking system, uncovering hidden accounts and redirecting resources vital to post-war recovery efforts. The runner, knowingly or not, had provided critical breadcrumbs that allowed analysts to reconstruct the complex web of German industrial financing, even as his own movements remained untraceable. Eyewitness accounts paint a picture of a man who lived deliberately within the shadows. Resistance members described a figure who appeared at improbable times, often carrying minimal materials: a ledger, a briefcase, a folded note. Swiss civilians recalled seeing a professional, inconspicuous man, blending seamlessly into Zurich cafes or the narrow streets of Annecy, who seemed to vanish whenever attention focused on him. Each account, however, offered only fragments, reinforcing the mystery of a courier who had moved with intelligence and precision through one of the most surveilled theaters of the war. The reveal, when viewed through modern declassified intelligence documents, is striking. Communications between OSS analysts and MI6 handlers indicate that the runner had likely continued passing information anonymously even after active hostilities ended in his operational zones. His ciphers hinted at financial transfers and industrial connections that would later influence Allied oversight of German assets in post-war Europe. In essence, his work bridged the wartime and post-war worlds, ensuring that crucial intelligence did not dissipate when physical operations concluded. Hale's concluding assessment captures the enigmatic nature of the man and his mission. We never knew his name. We never confirmed his allegiance. Yet the intelligence he carried shaped outcomes beyond our immediate comprehension. He was, in every sense, a broker of shadows. The phrase became emblematic in Allied circles, a shorthand for the mysterious couriers and operatives whose actions, though largely invisible, determined the course of wartime strategy. The close of the runner's story is marked by ambiguity rather than resolution. Unlike traditional spies captured or neutralized, he left no personal records, no public acknowledgements, no betrayals. Only partial ciphers, fragmented ledgers, and testimonies from agents like Hale provide evidence of his extraordinary activity. Historians continue to debate his identity. Was he a dedicated agent of MI6, a Swiss national acting independently for moral reasons, or a man whose motivations straddled both worlds? The uncertainty remains, a testament to the extraordinary operational security and intelligence discipline he maintained. In the broader historical lens, the runner's legacy endures as one of WWII's most elusive intelligence operations. He exemplifies the intersection of financial acumen, cryptographic skill, and human discretion that shaped the Allied war effort in subtle but profound ways. The lessons drawn are timeless. The greatest impacts are often made not in overt battle but in the invisible corridors of information, trust, and deception. And so, the story of the runner concludes, or perhaps, simply pauses, in the shadows of European history. His ledger fragments, partially decoded messages, and fleeting appearances remain, tantalizingly, a reminder of the quiet, invisible battles fought beyond the front lines. For historians, the question endures: Who was the man who brokered shadows, and how much of the Allied success in disrupting Axis finances can truly be credited to him? The answer, like the runner himself, remains concealed within the intricate tapestry of World War II intelligence.